Ladies and gentlemen, Cliff Richard. You were singing along with that while we were listening to that old clip. Do you still perform songs from that era?
Oh, yeah, from that era. I've never performed that one again, that particular song. But yes, that era gave us a bounty of fantastic songs. I mean, the set that I'm doing now is based on a couple of sets I've done over the last couple of years where I've introduced old rock and roll stuff. Now, instead of just introducing it as old rock and roll, it comes in on its own merit. I mean, I do it now interspersed throughout the show, and no one actually notices, I think. A lot of the young folks don't probably notice that the stuff is actually older than they are.
You seem to be sort of shaking yourself about a bit, almost impersonating Elvis Presley. Were you conscious then that that was the thing to do? You had to impersonate the Americans?
Yeah. Well, no, it wasn't so much an impersonation. It was just that there was a way of singing rock and roll. You know, we throw shapes. And it's always done, always has been done. People think that the new guys invented posing, but it never was so. It began way back. And there is a way of doing rock and roll. There's a way of, it's like anything, you know, there's a kind of almost like a position to be in. And then, of course, there are variances on that, which you just force your own personality and character into that groove and make it your own. So that Elvis was the prototype. I mean, the hair, and I mean, mind your hair is almost back to how it was. But there was a look about it. And, it wasn't so much an impersonation, it was just a matter of doing rock and roll the way it should be done. And the funny thing to me is that we in Britain were able to relate to a musical culture that had nothing... I mean, our musical culture here was lutes, wasn't it? And sort of green sleeves. And theirs was all the sort of black gospel and blues. And yet we were able to take rock and roll right to our hearts and then throw it back to the Americans. You go to America now and ask for, say, 10 favourite people, and you'll find it's Rod Stewart, Elton John, Fleetwood Mac, and 50% of them are English. And loads of British people.
The reason you got onto programmes like Oh Boy was because you had gone down to clubs like the Two Eyes Club and you'd sort of sat with other hopefuls and tried to be discovered. Were you fiercely ambitious? Did you go down there every single night and try and find out the right people to meet?
I went there every single night for 1 week. And when
As
I
long
wasn't,
as that?
Oh yeah, and when I wasn't discovered, I thought, right, I'm going to get discovered somewhere else, and we left. In a huff, actually. I was really upset because we thought we were really good. And,
were you good though, looking back?
Well, I suppose we were all right. I don't think we were as good as we thought we were. But the thing is, though, you see, everything we did was new. No one had done it before us. The Shads and I, and people like Marty Wilde, Billy Fury, in a way, we're the ones that created European rock and roll. It had never been done by British people before. So that everything we did was new. It didn't have to be good, I suppose. It was just exciting because it was new. But when we didn't get recognized, because Tommy Steele came out of that area, Terry Dean, people like that. And when we didn't get the recognition within 1 week, we left. And we in fact, went to do a show at the Gaumont, Shepherd's Bush. I mean, it's funny, really, because after that, I did all my TV series for BBC right next door at the TV theatre. But we went there, and the clever thing was that we said to them, look, we know this is a talent competition, but we do not want to participate in your talent competition. We will top the bill for free. And I think the words for free ring bells with most people. So we got the job. And it was through that we were able to get a record to an agent who came and watched us. He took the record to Norrie Paramore, the late Norrie Paramore, who gave us our contract.
What I find incredible is the way that you went from 1958, from that kind of Elvis style where you swiveled your hips and mothers and fathers thought it was disgusting, to 3 years, 4 years later doing films like The Young One, where you were the archetypal boy next door. Was that you? Or was that somebody who was guiding your career saying, look, you've got to change, you've got to become acceptable to the mass market? No,
no one's ever actually told me you've got to change, but I've been surrounded by people who, like myself, follow our intuition, really. And I always think that if you follow your instinct, you don't go too far wrong. I mean, obviously, no one's infallible, you make mistakes along the way. But it's like, I used to get really annoyed because the musical press just used to say things like, you know, oh, his music's never changed, you know. And yet, if you listen to, like, Move It, and then compare it with just a year later with Living Doll, it's a totally different life form. And then compare it with the ballads I did, and then compare it with Devil Woman, etc. There's been fantastic changes, but what's happened is that my changes have followed my instincts, which are slow. Instincts don't change overnight. They just gradually change. It's like looking at a photograph. I mean, my sisters and I have a real laugh sometimes. I think they look the same to me. My sisters look exactly how I always remember they look. But you get a picture of 15 years ago, and they've got all the backcomb beehive haircuts and all that. And we're all giggling away, and they have changed drastically, but they've changed slowly, and you get used to the change. So my progression has been right in front of the public, right in front of the camera, and people say, he hasn't changed. But of course I've changed, crikey, God, I know it. But you know, it's been a slow progress. So I've just followed my instincts. No one actually said to me, change now, do this, do that. All of us just thought this was the right thing to do. We went in that direction. If it was successful, we followed that path. If it wasn't, we just came back and started off another roadway.
But the press and people that do my kind of job love to compartmentalize you as being a specific type of music and the guy who's the religious nut, sometimes, really. What sort of stick did you take in the 60s when you did say that, look, religion is the path I'm going to follow?
I don't mind being, that's the only compartment I don't mind being in. I am religious, I am a Christian, and there's nothing I can change about that. There is one way of reaching God as far as I'm concerned, that's through Jesus. So that is a compartment I'm happy to be in. But when you break away from spirituality and start talking about music, I thumb my nose at them now. You know, I say, I defy you to put me in a box. Because songs on my new album, like Love Stealer, somebody at EMI told me that Iron Maiden would quite like to have got it. Now, they're a heavy rock band. When I did a song called Thief in the Night from last year's album, I got played on a heavy rock radio program, BBC. And I thought, great, someone had the honesty at least to say, oh, well, this is a heavy rock. They didn't say, oh, it's Cliff Richard, we won't listen to it. They played it. And I often think, actually, that, for instance, youngsters are really guilty of not giving people like myself a chance, because I know that there are a lot of young kids who wouldn't dream of playing a Cliff Richard record. And I just want to say to them, it's your loss, folks, because on my album I've got some real good electronic stuff. Because rock and roll does not belong to the young anymore. We can still do it, and I'm certainly not going to give it up. I don't mind stepping aside and let people join us, but I'm not going to get down, because until someone can actually do it better than us, why not do it with them? So all these great new bands are coming along, and they really are good. I mean, I like a lot of the bands that come out. There's a lot of really good stuff there. But I can do it too. And whereas I'm free enough in my mind to listen to all the youngsters coming along, I often think that the younger folk ought to give us a chance, because I don't want to be in a box. And my fans know what I can do, fortunately.
When you say you thumb your nose at people, almost like
not
I
the
don't
public.
care. No,
but my public are way ahead of all the musical press, for instance. They heard me singing in falsetto 8, 10 years ago. But when I did it on Nearly Famous, everyone went, oh, look, he's singing in falsetto. And I've been doing it, but my fans knew that 5 years before the press. Because if the press had come to my concerts and been musically inclined, which I'm afraid they're not really, they're in compartments.
But even after 20...
I sound like I'm having a go at
No, actually, let's develop that a bit further, because even after 25 years, I know that you still get upset by bad press or personalised press, don't you? Why do you allow it to get to you?
I don't see how you can help it, because if you're at all... You see, most of us who are in this industry, or anybody that is in the arts, have to have a sensitivity, otherwise you couldn't be there. You couldn't proclaim Miss Unites or Devil Woman if you weren't emotional type of person. So therefore, you do something, and with all honesty, it's the best you can do at the time that you do it. Somebody slags it off, or else they be very personal. I mean, I get a lot of personal... I remember reading... in quite a good, and not just a trashy thing either, it was, I think, some supplement to one of the major papers, and it said, his nose is like a cherry on an iced bun. Well, I mean, I can't help the way I look, and I thought it was an unfair thing and hurtful thing to say. I don't see how any of us in our industry can stop being hurt. The only thing is now I've decided that I don't see why I should put up with it, so I give back now as much as I get. In other words, I've now realized that next to politicians and TV, probably the press are the most powerful media, but it's the most misused power ever. We can't trust them anymore. I know what I read about myself when I read it and I say, I didn't say that, I didn't mean that, I didn't do that. Now, if that's about me and I'm unimportant. So when you read about real life things like, you know, let's say a politician makes a statement that's going to really change our lives, maybe, change our society, how do we know it's true anymore? Because the media have made it so that you have to think, take it with a pinch of salt. Well, I mean, what a terrible indictment on your art form.
But despite the press, I'm sure you're going to go on for another 25 years. There's really only one...
press, I haven't had always a bad time with them.
No,
I do have quite a...
But there is only one way we could celebrate 25 years. We've all chipped together and bought this plonk. It's actually champagne, or at least that's what's written on the bottle. So, thank you very much indeed. If I can sort of act as mummy for the moment...
How nice.
Can I sort of toast you to the next 25 years?
You certainly can.
And we're actually going to have a look at a single which is going to take you into the next 25 years. It's your new single, which I have to stress isn't out for another 2 weeks, right?
No, it's December the 14th, but I got my fingers crossed.
Right,
I certainly don't mind drinking a champagne toast.
Cliff, to the next 25 years, thanks for
Thank you
joining us
very
on
much.
Pebble Mill.
Thank you.